Okay, so we're recording. We're good to go. Everybody, welcome to the 6 o'clock presentation. If you don't know who this man is, he walks in some pretty big lacrosse circles, and Foxy and I have gone pretty ways back into my NLL playing days. But I'm going to leave the introductions to yourself. He's going to present on safety and emergency measures that are being taken place, things like now. So, Foxy, you know what? I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. You threw me there with the emergency measures, so let's see what I could do for that.
My apologies. Wrong wording. I had two screens going at the same time, and I was looking at the wrong one.
No problem. Hello, all. My name is Mike Fox. This program is Equipment and Safety. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask that you mute all your microphones and just use the chat bar to ask questions. As you heard, Brad's going to monitor them, and he'll pop in when we get a break here. I'll do my best to monitor them as well and address them when I'm able. Okay, I hope this information at 6 o'clock on a Friday night is informative for you. So levels and rules, the evolution of the equipment position, philosophy and responsibility, the properly fitting of equipment, understanding the differences with field and box, a program that's called Prepare, that I tried a little bit from the equipment side, what to do in emergencies, reference material, recycling, which is a fun topic, and then questions, that we don't get over. Okay, there we go. Again, I'm Mike Fox. You all saw my bio, but in lacrosse, I ran and coached the youth lacrosse program for 13 years. I worked in the MLL for 13 years, the NLL for 10, and I served all 7 teams of the PLL. Now with levels, as I started to work on this presentation, I was reminded of the time Vince Lombardi took over for the Green Bay Packers, and he saw a need to get back to the basics. So he said to the guys, gentlemen, this is a football. To which Max McGee held up his hand and said, Coach, can you slow it down? Well, I'm going to try to take this a little slower with everybody. We do have a diverse audience. I will not address levels nor rules, but keep it somewhat basic from youth to pro. Now, believe it or not, I began playing with equipment in 5th grade, fixing suspension helmets that my coach couldn't fix. In the beginning, back in the 60s and the 70s, the equipment manager took care of a limited supply of gear. In a lot of those cases, he was told what to order, so he even had limited control. At college, we had only one choice for screw-ins or molded cleats, and then there was only one pair of turf shoes. And believe it or not, back then, when they came to Philadelphia to play the Army-Navy game, turf was so new that the service academies borrowed shoes from Temple and Penn because they didn't have them. That's how limited this supply was. So the man I worked for back then, he even was so old school, he relaced footballs to fix the bladders on them. Now, the older equipment managers did a lot of their own repair and maintenance. Back then, a college football team fit all their gear into a box truck. We're talking one of these little, U-Haul rental trucks. Now, it packs very tightly into a 40-foot tractor trailer. And when I worked with the Philadelphia Eagles, we traveled with 90 trunks in addition to all the bags for all the players. Now, you jump to the Arena Football League, and you had 30 bags for the players, coaches, trainers, video crew, all the extra gear, plus uniforms and laundry. This teaches you to know and understand what is truly needed. It prepared me for the NLL, where the equipment manager traveled with 3 bags at most, as well as the MLL. And that was in addition to my own clothing. Now, this change in the equipment landscape has the manager handling more and more effectively and doing repair and replace later. Today's equipment manager must be adept at management and professional development, purchasing, procurement, budgeting, adhering to sponsorship agreements, repair and maintenance, laundry, care of fabrics, fitting and safety of the gear, even anatomy, and all rules or requirements and compliance for their programs. Now, under the philosophy and responsibilities category, a head coach will teach rules, plays, and proper techniques in order to create a safe environment. An athletic trainer will do preventive medicine, taping, provide strength and nutrition training in order to create a safe environment. Well, guess what? The equipment manager will also provide proper equipment and to the athletes in order to create a safe environment. Whoops. So you can see the relationships are important to ensure the safety of the athletes. It's the communication that goes back and forth. Everybody has their own sphere to work out of, but they all interrelate with people. Now, in coaches' meetings, we discuss weather, injuries, and conditions that might impact the athlete that day. We look at the whole team first, then the specific player. For example, if we're having a hot weather practice, we discuss for everybody what they're going to wear that day. How many water breaks are we going to have? Are we going to have ice baths at the end? Now, depending upon the program, if you have African Americans in there, then we discuss the conditions like sickle cell. So we all know to keep our eye on them to prevent heat stroke caused by EHI, which is exertional heat illness. Now, the manager's role has changed also because they hear everything in the locker room and they become a bit of a psychiatrist. Back in the day, you were never, ever allowed in the equipment room. Now the door is open to come in, sit down, and talk. The philosophy for my job is simple. I do my job and offload any crap that prevents any coach or player from doing theirs. Now, when you look at the MLL and the NLL, we're traveling from anywhere from 9 to 15 airports. So bags get lost from time to time. You can't have that many people traveling and stuff not happening. My contact information is on their equipment bags. So I am the one working with the airports and the airlines to get their lost bags back. This allows the player to concentrate on the game. Additionally, when something is going on the bench and a trainer is tied up, I'm another set of eyes out there on the field and floor to spot any issues. Now, let's apply math to that philosophy. Every coach wants a player to contribute 100%. I'm not going to go over and say the 110, 120. Everybody wants 100%. Now, what if a player comes out because of an equipment issue or an injury? I went to a lacrosse game, box lacrosse, where I saw a player on the opening face-off, his helmet opened up. It was a Reebok helmet, and the center opened up. Normally, it takes 15 seconds to fix. But because this equipment manager they had did not have the experience, what they did was it took a whole quarter to fix. So how can a player give 100% when he's only out there 75% of the time? So with my math, he's only going to be 75% effective. Add to that the teams I saw this past year on college that were traveling without an equipment manager. When they had an issue, they had two solutions. They either had a player running up and down the sidelines to look for the drill, look for their backup stick, try to get everything taken care of, or the coach, the assistant coach, whose responsibility was equipment, leaving their other job, whether it's running the box or running an offense or defense, to come over to take care of it. Problem is, they're both not doing their job now. So what does that cost? Not having a player playing or a coach coaching. Yes, stuff breaks. Players get hurt. If you can't cut the time down on the pit stops, that's where I come in. That's where the equipment manager comes in. he will keep that player playing. If I work with the trainer, maybe I'm able to pad that player differently so they can get back in, be more protected. If I'm able to help the player swap his head and get him back out on the field, he's able to go out there, and at the same time, the coach is doing his job, coaching. Now, let's look at the equipment. And my next thing up was supposed to be this. I will not read this slide to you. It's very easy to fit a helmet for any sport. But the one thing that I'm going to add to this that's not in there is something that they do with other sports. And that is make sure the player, the athlete, their hair is cut to the length they're going to wear, and even go so far as to wet their head. Okay? That enables it to get a proper fit up front and then go from there. Obviously, lacrosse helmets, some of them with the adjustments in the back, and the difference is you can go and make the changes on the fly as needed. Now, whether or not you provide the equipment or allow them to get their own equipment, you still have a responsibility to make sure it fits and they're wearing it properly. You can see if as they run, they're bobbleheads with this helmet bouncing all over the place. I was at a lacrosse tournament and this kid's head was bobbing all over the place, so I went to adjust it. And here, not only was the helmet the wrong size, they had washcloths. The parent put washcloths in there to try to add padding to it. When I spoke to the parent, they didn't want to spend the money for a smaller helmet, because of the cost of the helmet. Problem is, the coach had allowed the kid out there that should the kid have gotten hurt, the coach could have been liable. Okay? As you're talking to the athlete, now we'll go back to those other pictures, you can then see, as you're talking to them, where their eyes are. Their eyes should be coming out of the top bar. If the helmet is tilted and they're looking through the second or third bar, the helmet is improperly fit. Once again, this is something you can see immediately and correct it. Another thing I do, if we're playing on a rain day and the players go out and do their informals and then they go out on the team stretch, when they come in to get ready, I remind them to check the fit of their helmet as well as their pockets, because the rain, it's much wetter, so the stuff will move a little easier on their head, but it also can bag out their pockets. So when I have them checking their stick, they're checking their helmet to make sure that both heads are proper, and it keeps them on the field. Now, here are the helmets for the runners in field and box. The box helmet is lighter on the left and provides better visibility, but it doesn't cover the brain stem in the back. Whereas the Cascade on the right also has a visor. Plus, add to what I said earlier, rules in your particular program don't allow one helmet versus the other. Now, helmets are made primarily of two layers, a hard polycarbonate shell, the outer shell, and one inner lining of padding, usually foam in some form. The hard shell protects the skull while the padding absorbs the hits. Now, helmets are designed to protect against linear hits, which are direct hits, while hits to the side are rotational hits. Some studies say that these types of hits may be worse than the linear hits, as they cause the head and neck to twist rapidly. There is no test out there to effectively test helmets for rotational hits, so we don't know how effective they will be in protecting the helmet. Protecting the head. Now, here are two types of goalie helmets. In this case, both are used for box, while the one on the right is also used for field. I'll get back to that in a second. Here's my only slide on women's field lacrosse. The one on the left, you can see that the goalie is wearing a Cascade goalie helmet. The ones on the right is the eye protection helmet combo or just the eye protection. Now, we're going to talk about the helmets for a second. You need to understand that the helmets and the rating systems that are out there. I reviewed a listing of the top 10 hockey helmets. The first one was the editor's choice for intermediate and advanced levels. It had a concussion rating of 7.93 and an overall rating of 100%. The second was budget friendly with a 12.25 concussion rating and a 95% rating. The third, let me say this again, the third helmet had an overall rating of 99%. Now, what I left out in this piece of information was that a concussion rating is listed as 1 to 15, with 1 being the best and 15 being the worst. The first helmet was rated at 7.93. Second at 12 and a quarter. However, to close this circle, the worst helmet out there was rated number 2, while the third helmet, which I didn't give you the rating on, was 1.67, the best of all. So that when a person sees a helmet rated 100% or in the number 1 position, they think it's safe, but it's just north of 50% risk on the concussion scale. Number 2 sits above the 80% mark to likely have a concussion. So you need to totally understand what they are saying and what they're trying to sell. Now, here we see the field players, both the runner and the goalie, as well as the box players. Now, on the players, not the goalies, the biggest differences are the helmet, bicep pads on the box player, the sticks, because in box they don't play with the long pole, and then with the goalies, on the other hand, that is a totally different animal. Now you can see how the goalie gear is working there in the game. Let me stop that share. Here is a Reebok goalie mask that they use. Now, one of the things I do in my prepare program is I will buy the 1-inch strapping and the chin strap buckles, so I have them in addition to the sweatband that's in the top. That is something that I will carry with me while the goalie carries his mask. Here's the field helmet. Now, for the goalie. Another thing I do and I keep with me is clear nail polish. What I will do inside the helmet, I will put clear nail polish on the inside of the screws. That serves several purposes. Purpose number 1, it's acting as a Loctite without really keeping it on there. It takes minimal effort to break it then, but it's going to keep the screws together. Number 2, by coating it on the inside, I'm preventing it from rusting. So I'm doing prevention there. I do that on both the helmets. Here is the hockey helmet. I do the same thing, coating the inside. One of the things that you might notice on the side, I can move that up and down. I do not drill any new holes. When I'm putting on a mask on a helmet, I use the holes that are there. They're there and engineered for a purpose. If I started putting additional holes in the helmet, I'm putting that person at risk. The shoulder pad, this one, the players have done a good job in cutting it down, but unlike a football shoulder pad, there's not a lot of plastic on here to help dissipate the blow. So what the foam does is the foam decelerates any force that's there. If you put a plate on there and hit the plate, you're pushing it over a larger area. That's not happening in this case. It's going straight in. One of the things you can do is you can use slow release foam, and hopefully you can see that. It's coming back as I'm pushing it down slowly, though. It's not popping right back up. If you have somebody that gets injured, you can build this up a little more. That's the advantage of this pad. Also, with a football shoulder pad, you would have a cantilever which creates the arch to help protect the shoulder, the clavicle, the AC joint, everything. You don't have that. Player took the pads off here, took the shoulder cups off. Once again, that, we hold on, I hold on to them, but you have the naked carcass here. Now let's look at the goalie glove. Here's the goalie glove for box. Some players will cut down this side. Here's a goalie glove for field. You can see the mushroom thumb. That's, look at the size difference. The one glove actually does fit inside the other one. And then you look at the player glove and you see the differences in the thumb. One of the things I've done, there's a lot of goalies out there that have broken their thumbs. And there's a football glove company that I've gotten the glove and cut the fingers off except the thumb. They have a SAM splint, which is a little plastic and metal splint that slides in there. And the goalie's able to wear that. And as they wear it, it's going to protect them a little more after they break their thumb. We're now getting over to the bicep pads that I'll show you more in depth later. But here's the smaller, here's the larger. You don't have to go and buy these from a lacrosse or hockey store. You can even get these from a football store because these are basically thigh pads. That's, elbows. Where's the one? So, with the elbow pads, you've got the defensive players that opt for the smaller pad. So those that wear them opt for the smaller pad. The runners will go for the bigger pads, whether they go for this style or the style with the cups on them. They still go for a protection over their elbows. Now, jumping back quickly to the gloves, a lot of times the wrist gets opened up on the glove. So what we do is we get slash guards and put them in there, whether they're the Evo shields or we make them out of plastic and bend them ourselves and use sweatbands. But that's what we do. Now, let me jump back to this. Now in this picture, you can see Brett Manny getting his elbow pads taped on. He does that. You see in the background, you got Anthony Kelly with his bicep pad on. He will get that taped on. We have the guys lined up in the locker room before a game getting all taped up. The other thing is I wanted to show you is the ribbon back pads. I've seen kids putting them on over their shoulder pads, and that's not the proper place to put them. They go under first, and then the shoulder pads go on top. So the elbow pads can be taped. They don't have to. But the biggest thing here is that we're using electrical tape. And this electrical tape is great because it stretches, and the tensile strength is great enough to hold everything in place. Now, on my hip there, you see the top of a drill. Now, that's part of my preparation plan. Whoops. part of my preparation plan. As we go over the plan, you will understand how I operate. On my hip, it's a 9-volt drill. In my pockets, regardless of whether it's box or field, I'll have a couple of helmet screws with T-nuts. I'll have electrical tape, 2 lighters, a stringing kit, like that. The Maverick Allen wrench on a lanyard so I could find it quickly, couple Sharpies, some zip ties, stick screws, both sizes, and then dry erase markers in addition to a whistle and a screwdriver. That is what I carry in my pocket. I'll also might have gum or cough drops depending upon what coach I'm working for. With my background, I work college lacrosse as well as pro. So one coach goes for the cough drops, the other coaches go for the gum. Now, in my bag on the bench, what I have on the bench is a computer bag that I converted. It works out well because that gives me a full parts kit from Cascade in the top, a bottle of size 8 and 10 screws. Size 8 screws are what size screws are that come with the stick. My size 8 screws are all self-tapping screws. The size 10 will go into the hole, and I use them when the hole starts to expand and get bigger. I have whiteboards in there. I have Sharpies. I have dry erase markers. I've got homemade sewing kits with needles already laced up. I've got hot glue guns. That's all in that case that's on the sidelines. Additionally, I'll have a tape measure and poncho, as well as clipboard and paper for the coaches. That way I'm prepared. Now in the locker room, we'll have rolls of white tape, black tape, electrical tape, a drill, scissors, couple screwdrivers, a keeper box with screws and parts, along with the clear nail polish again. I also keep a 3-inch chop saw. It kind of looks like a cast cutter to take care of any length issues that somebody might have when they want to cut their shaft down. And a tape measure is attached to that. I do have a fanny pack that sits there and goes out with me. All these items listed fit into a normal size equipment bag after the game and I'm done with it. Now, under the bench is a backpack with 2 drills, 1 screwdriver, 2 small hand towels, bolt cutters, and a CPR mask. This bag is our emergency bag. In the outer pocket, I also keep mouth guards for them as well. Now, each and every time I set the locker room up the same way. All the lockers are set where the uniform is in one spot, the loop, the helmet, shoes, towel, etc. is always in the same spot. That allows me to stand in one spot in the locker room and look around and make sure I see everything, as well as the players able to look around the locker room and see how it's set up. So they know where everything is. They don't have to say, where's this, where's that, I don't have this. This process works. It has meaning. It's the same with the tools in the bags. Since I don't carry everything with me, my pockets are my first line of defense. Let's say during a timeout, when I'm out there walking among the players, somebody wants me to fix their head. It needs to be tightened. Or a coach needs a new dry erase marker. Or a clip went on their chin strap. I'm able to do whatever I need to because I'm prepared. And by having multiple drills in multiple spots, there's no need to run back and forth. Locker room drills, stay in the locker room. Field bag drills, stay there. Being organized has a calming effect on the kids when their stick breaks or he needs help with his gear. Preparation is proper planning. Now, in an emergency, I did address the emergency bag. Accidents happen. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. They happen. The main constant is that you travel, whether you're whether you're college or pro, you travel with the same people. So what I do is I work with my trainer because we're the constant in every game. Both of us are always there. In an emergency, we know what our roles are. He knows what's in my bag. I know what I've got there. We practice removing the mask, stabilizing the head before we turn the athlete over to EMS. We know what we have to do. Now, I said we have 2 drills in the bag. That's simple. We have 2 because in case one loses its charge, it's an emergency. We have to be prepared. We also have manual screwdrivers that have 2 size Phillips and 2 size slotted heads on them. The 2 handtails, excuse me, can be used just to clean up the athlete or quickly rolled and used as helmet chocks to help stabilize the head. Again, we practice, we stay calm, we get it done. It would be easy for me to say, this book or that book I learned a lot from. We are in a situation where I learn something every single day. I learn from other equipment managers, but more importantly, I learn just by glancing through magazines. There's times I'm in doctors' waiting rooms, dentist waiting rooms, airports, where you go through a magazine and I might get a laundry tip from Women's Day. Consumer Reports is great on washers, dryers, laundry detergent, learning the different things on the parts of a shoe and what the purpose of them is. There's a hiking magazine that also gave me the information on the proper shoes and what to look at. Everywhere you are, you could learn something new every day. One of the things I heard about, and I then looked it up, there's 66 different ways to lace a shoe. And some of them are decorative, but as you go through and go to that website and look at the 66 different ways, you could use the shoes for high instep. You could use them to prevent slippage. So there's a purpose there. Now, I'm a bit of a hoarder. I keep old catalogs, but that helps me to see how the equipment evolves. It also helps me to cut through the BS that some sales people say. I had a salesman tell me that this one product was their #1 longest selling product that they had. Well, when I went through the catalogs, that was the only product they had for years. So obviously, and it was their only model. So obviously it was their #1 selling product. It's kind of like my mom telling me as her only son that I was her favorite boy. Now, I already told you I'm a hoarder. When the players size their helmets, I keep the inserts. When the players take their shoulder pads apart, I keep those parts. Those are items that are thrown out, can't help you when you need them. Holding onto the helmet sizers will help you should somebody else's helmet, the liner tears, it breaks, it gets lost. That happens. The pad parts can be used to help both the injured shoulder by reattaching. In this shoulder pad, if you take the shoulder cup off and then he injures his shoulder, we can put the shoulder cup back on. Or they use the padding in other environments. What that does is, you can use it as a donut for things like a ball bruise. Lastly, with shafts, bent long poles can be cut down into shorties, plain and simple. Broken shafts can be made into defensive training poles where you're learning and you're teaching how to steer. And you don't need a whole stick. You go down to 14 or 16 inches to do that. Often your face-off guys will use a hockey puck. And that hockey puck to keep the head spread apart. I can't tell you how many of my lacrosse guys have lost their hockey pucks on the field. Well, I'm using the gas station method. I have it attached to a lacrosse stick. You're going to find this once that hockey puck, comes out of the player's pocket. It's right there. You can make pocket pounders with your short sticks that are broken, or adjust them so you can carry your practice cones and your game cones. There's a lot that could be done. Now I'm going to talk briefly, since I was kind of put on the spot. I will talk briefly about COVID and what can be done there. I did an article recently, and the article I did recently was on ozone generators. Now, ozone generators can clean over 99% of surfaces. So what they've done is we use the ozone generators in locker rooms. Right now in college, a lot of colleges are using them to clean the equipment. They're putting in the shoulder pads, they're putting in the helmet. It's cleaning off any mold that's there. It's cleaning off black mold. And it has been proven the person that does make the ozone generators has commented and come out publicly and announced that it does kill COVID on surfaces. So you put an ozone generator in a locker room, you're able to clean it. We're also going to be using masks and gloves. We're going to be spraying everything down. We're going to be doing everything we can on all levels. I'm not just speaking for one program to keep everything clean. We're going to be using bleach water to clean areas. We're going to be wiping down walls. We got to do what we got to do to get back to the norm. And the unfortunate thing is, you got to do a little bit more to get back to the norm. The world as we knew it isn't there anymore. So when we look at the equipment, when we look at the people that are borrowing equipment, if a school is letting equipment out, schools have to use the ozone generators or the sprays to disinfect. You're going to see more and more disinfecting going on in-house. You're going to see more and more recyclers. There's a company in Pittsburgh, Brozone, that does what they can. That do what they can. They go and they travel around from school to school. They even go to people's homes and clean and sanitize the gear. The other thing that we didn't discuss is hydration. Being that I'm out there and there's myself and a trainer, I will do everything in my power to help hydrate the players and to keep them hydrated. Earlier when I spoke, I addressed you got the psychiatrist role. Sometimes you get in a situation where a player will tell you things that he won't tell the trainer. So you kind of have to act as a mediator there and do what you can. And you don't want to blow them out of the water either. You don't want to sit there and sound like you're running right back and telling people. You, like I said, you play the psychiatrist. Well, what if you tell the trainer? Player's hurt. He doesn't want to tell anybody, but he wants to be protected. Well, you can't hide that. You have a responsibility to the team and the program to tell the trainer, but you might want to stress to the athlete to, come forward and to speak up on his own behalf. From a hydration side, being around for over 40 years in sports, we use Motive Pure. Motive Pure is probably the best rehydrant out there right now. It contains no sugar, and it's naturally sweetened. So, this is something that has to, you have to help get the players hydrated. So when you now look at the way this is going, that's why I tied the hydration in there. I got a message on my screen which slowed me up there for a second. But when you look at the way the world is going today, we're not using squeeze bottles. We probably won't be using squeeze bottles for a while. We're going to be using cups out there. So that's that. Questions? Come back, Brad.
Well, I never left. I don't see. Yeah, I mean, we feel free to put comments either in the chat or the Q&A, because I'm sure there are questions. There's just so much being changed these days, and we're in such a unpredictable world that, and it's going to change region to region, place to place, going forward. So, be interesting to see. Okay, so for youth sports, what are some suggestions for returning to play in small groups?
Well, part of the conversation you and I had earlier, the National Federation has turned around and said that, believe it or not, lacrosse is a high-risk return to play sport. So, what we're encouraging, I'm involved again. I'm on the board of the lacrosse program that I used to run, and what we're encouraging them to do is to go out, do the wall ball, go to a park, throw the ball around with your friends, but obviously practice social distancing while you're doing that. From a standpoint, I'd love to see a return to play. I can only watch so much Korean baseball. I can only do so much at 5 a.m. to see that. But I'd love to see a return to play. I'd love to see people just getting back into the parks. Out in the Philadelphia area and the suburbs, on the western suburbs where I'm at, the parks have caution tape all around them, so you really aren't allowed in them.
Right. Another question from the audience: how do you prepare for a player who asks for a piece of equipment that might not be available?
Can we be more specific? They're asking for something I don't have, or they're asking for something that isn't made?
Let's go with you don't have, which I know is going to be the answer is, well, you'd have it. So.
Okay, if it's something I don't have, depending upon when he asks me, I will do everything in my power to get it. One of the neatest jobs I had was I worked for an equipment company, and a lot of stuff I can make, believe it or not. I made shoulder pads, I made rib protectors, I can make the slash guards and whatnot. So depending upon when he asks me what he's asking me, I mean, I've run out in between a practice and a game and gone to a sporting goods store and bought something that is needed. Like I said earlier, when you're traveling in from anywhere from 9 to 15 airports, you will lose stuff. And yes, in my equipment bag, I might have a pair of shoulder pads and bicep pads and this, that, and the other thing. And invariably, guess what? We forgot a cup. So now you got to run out and get that. So I will do everything in my power to make sure that player is taken care of.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you see that amongst some of the better equipment managers in the league who are prepared for it. I mean, for Team Israel, we've copied a page out of several books, and we always make sure we have a vehicle at the facility just in case someone needs to leave immediately, and we try and park as close as possible. So that, I think that answers that one. Now, we did have a comment. Someone was asking you to, you were talking about weather and dealing with inclement type stuff. How do you deal with hurricanes?
That was a lot of fun. Thanks, Meeks, for bringing that one up. That was in 2011. We were, it's the Boston Cannons' first year in the playoffs. I'm sorry, in the championship game. And we were playing and I mean, my room was on the 3rd floor and we had like a 1/2 inch of water in my hotel room from the hurricane. What we did was, and I can't bring the picture up here, but after the game, we went and I was able to pull all the fans in from outside, and we were at Navy Marine Corps Stadium, so we're down in Annapolis, and they had all these sideline fans sitting out, and I brought them all into the locker room, and we had all the players' gear hanging off all over the fans, and we had them blowing the entire night. I took a bunch of stuff back to the hotel to be washed and dried. And then the next morning I did a walkthrough. And the funny thing is I had drawn the walkthrough down earlier. So I'll bring that up in a second. But I did a walkthrough on the field before while the players were getting ready to have breakfast. Now I had a coach, and I'm going to cut this in half for a second. One of my first coaches that I still call him Coach, Wayne Harden. He wanted his players to do this every single game. You go out to the field, you start, you do a banana out, you run a little in pattern, you kind of do a hook, then you do a post, and then then you do a corner and then a post. And then you reverse it and you come back down the field. That enables you to check your footing. You're doing different types of cuts, different types of reads on the field, but also it gives you the chance. What I do differently with lacrosse is I'll go up and down the field and then back the other way where I'm mirroring it. And I'll take a lacrosse ball with me and I'll bounce it. And I'm looking for dead spots. On a grass field, I'm looking for sprinkler heads. I'm looking for anything like that which could impact the game. And I'll report back. So to talk about the Hurricane game, I walked the field and I told them where water was pooling, where it wasn't. They knew coming in. And then the other thing I did, everything was closed for the first game, but the second game, the stores, I bought a bunch of WD-40 and I sprayed the bottoms of all the players' shoes and the sides. So even though there was still water on the field, the silicone waterproofed their shoes for them.
Okay. Another question from the audience is, what kind of ozone generators are they using to clean the gear?
You stuck me on that. There's ozone generators for football equipment. It looks like a giant double door refrigerator that you open up, and it can hold like 18 to 20 pair of shoulder pads. The brand name I'm at a loss on. We're looking at the smaller ozone generators for the locker rooms, and there's maybe 15 different brands that I've looked at, and for me to come up with one specific name, somebody just told me Sandy Sport. Thank you, NANA. So I appreciate that. But yeah, there's a bunch of small ozone generators. In fact, I sleep with a CPAP, and the commercials that you see now for $99, you can get your CPAP cleaner. Well, your CPAP cleaner is not that kills everything. So everything that commercial is talking about, put it on a larger scale. You can, in about an hour and a half, you can clean an entire locker room with the ozone generator. And yes, Mark, I'm sorry, athletic trainer. I'm used to saying trainer because we go back and forth between athletic trainer and strength and conditioning trainer. So I wasn't trying to disrespect anybody.
No, of course not. So Hugo, you might have to clarify this, but he's wanting to know what's the next step for goalie equipment. And Hugo, Foxy's involved with box and field at so many levels. You might have to clarify what you mean by that.
Well, first and foremost, with the field guys, like I said, I wasn't going to address rules. Next year, everybody, high school and college is requiring all the goalies to have goalie gear that conforms, a chest protector that conforms with the NOXI. I think it's the 2020, the 200. And the advantage, let's see, I did have it written down. What that does is that puts a hard plate in the middle to protect the heart from comedo cordis. So you're going to see that. Comedo cordis is the condition where if you hit the heart at the wrong time, as opposed to the people saying the right time, you hit it at the the electrical charge stops, and it stops the heart from beating. Now in lacrosse, there's been maybe 20 deaths in the last 40 years, but it's still enough of an issue. That's why AEDs are going out to all the fields and whatnot.
Right.
They're also, I mean, especially fields that are shared with baseball. You're starting to see more uptick on baseball with common cordis. But lacrosse, you're going to see it, and it's basically, I'm going to steal this again. It basically sits as a plastic shield. I'm seeing more and more players in the last 20 years, more field players wearing the McDavids on their shins and their knees for protection. So I'm seeing more of that, both from youth and up through college. From the box, I don't know. They keep changing the dimensions
Right.
of the goalie gear on all levels, right? I mean, international is a little different than the NLL, which is different than the OLA and the WLA.
Yeah.
So once they come up with, I believe they need to come up with a better standard for everybody, so they're not messing the goalies up. I don't want to say screwing them, but they are, by having, the goalie can wear the same gear everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, World Lacrosse and for box anyways, World Lacrosse and NLL are pretty similar. World's probably a little tighter than the NLL is, and then you're right. There's a distinct difference between those two and CLA rules.
Yeah, I mean, when I started and I was taping the goalies up to go get measured, they were allowed to be taped up. They pulled the calipers out. They put the calipers down the knees, down the shins. They went across the chest. The tape, allowed to take the tape off.
Yeah.
Now I believe my last year there, you weren't allowed to put tape on anymore ahead of time.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, we're approaching that hour. Well, we'll give it another question if anybody wants to put one in there, but there's one sitting there ready for you, which, ozone generators on the road if necessary. Would you communicate with the opponent's equipment manager for usage?
Sure.
You should probably talk about the relationship when you travel.
Well, it's a double-edged sword on that relationship. As I said earlier, and I don't mean to keep harping on this, when you're traveling and you're traveling from I'll stay with the 9 airports. You're traveling from 9 airports. You risk losing stuff. So you need to know you can go in. Now, years ago, I worked in the visiting locker room for the Philadelphia Eagles. And Dallas Cowboys came in and they needed some gear. And we're talking stupid stuff like firm grip. Back in the day, they used firm grip. Here, a player had taken it out and never put it back. He needed to borrow it. That's the relationship that you have with these guys. You're going to be in a situation where you need something and they can lend it to you because you have to return the favor to them. So there's that cooperation. You could yell at them all you want during the game, but before and after, you're best friends. I mean, we've all gone to when Reebok was the equipment provider for the NLL. We all went to Reebok together and sat there and spoke about the advantages and disadvantages of this. Can you change this pad? Can you do this? Can you do that? And we all talk. So that relationship is huge. From the standpoint of travel, we started to, and Chip, please jump in on this. Send me a message if you got it. But what we do is, with the NLL, I got to a point where we asked to standardize in the locker room. They've got some electrical tape, screwdrivers, stuff like that. I know they were starting to work on the trainers. We calculated 1 year we were spending close to 25 to 30 grand as just baggage fees to get all these guys and all the gear there. So the cooperation and what you can get is huge. Yeah. Thanks, Chip. Some do and some don't. Chip is my assistant with the PLL, but he's also the assistant trainer for the Philadelphia Wings. So thanks, Chip. Yeah, another question came in there, and I do not have black tape in front of me. So, Craig, what I do with the slash guards, I start at the bottom, go across, once around, twice around, come back down. So I cross. So I have 2 wraps up top, come across, my 3rd wrap fully across the bottom. So that X, as well as the 2 on the top, 1 on the bottom, have held everything in place. I do with electrical tape. I do that will use the Velcro. I'll still do it. I'll still come up, cross, double wrap, come back down. But when I go across the Velcro as well. Okay? And then I also have the guys that before they put it on will work to bend the plastic even more. Okay? So when they put it up there, it's not this giant airplane wing on their arms.
Okay, so listen, we got two questions, and they tie into each other, and then we'll end it. I promised you an hour, and I appreciate you giving up your time. So appreciated. But this is back to box lacrosse. So why do so many box guys wear such loose-fitting chin straps? And that's part 1.
Give me part 2.
Part 2 is, should the chin guard on box helmets be attached to the cage? And that, I mean, I can help you out on that answer. And there's some different rules for that one.
I know US Box Law wants the helmets that way. I hate them that way.
Now, to be specific, you're talking about chin attached. That's what you don't like?
Attached to the mask, yes. As you look at the older lacrosse helmets, hockey helmets, when they came out with the swing mask and everything hinged on that chin. So you got hit on the chin, you got hit on the mask, everything is forced back up through the chin and up through the TMJ, which is your jawbone, okay? You don't want to do that. I have seen, and especially with the hangers, I don't have them in here. Especially with the hanger strap on the box helmet. Okay, you have the guys that still keep this strap on, in addition to a 4-pointer. I'm a believer that you need that 4-pointer or even a 2-pointer to hold the helmet in place. I spoke about the bobblehead effect that you get. There's too many times you're seeing the helmets out of position when the player's getting hit. The helmet is designed to be held in place in order for it to be effective and to work. I'm a believer in the 4-pointer. I'm a believer in snugly on the chin, up and back. I've seen them, like I said, wearing both, and a player running past getting his stick stuck, believe it or not, in a player's dangling strap. So I would prefer that they were a true 4-pointer. And I know, yes, it's Canadian.
Well, you know what? I was going to respond to that, but you know what? I mean, I'm Canadian, and I played for a while, and I never wore my strap down. Like, mine was always pretty firm, and I think there's just more guys wearing it loose. But you know, I've had my nose ripped open a few times, and you know, I don't know. It's tough to say.
From a safety, I've had some of the best players in the world playing with us.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sit there and argue with a Brody Merrill or a Dan Dawson who's got it dangling when it's working for him. At the same time, when you got somebody that splits their chin open and we're trying to protect them, then I'm going to step in. One last thing. I'm sorry. I know we went over, but just one last thing. If your game day is Saturday, from Sunday through Friday, I will give you all the crap in the world about your equipment. I will yell at you about your diet if I don't believe it's right. I will yell at you about hydration if it's not right. I will yell at you about your chin strap if it's not right. On game day, I won't say a word because you got to concentrate on your game.
Fair enough. You know what? We really, really appreciate everything you've got. Mark, I can see that in there. And Foxy, if you're okay with that, Mark works for the Winnipeg Jets. And can I get your contact information to and from each other? You good
Yeah,
with
well,
that?
my next slide that I jumped off of, hold on.
You gonna put it up for him? So
Come on.
Mike, I'm not gonna end it. If you can just tell me when you see Foxy's
There it is.
slide here. If you want to jot
Guys,
down his email, let me know.
there's all my email up there. You got it?
Are you on social media platforms?
Yeah. Michael J. Fox
Yeah.
on Facebook and Wings Equipment on everything else.
Awesome.
But wingsequipment@hotmail.com is my email. Feel free to identify. Yeah, I will dig out. I got Mark's contact information somewhere, so send me an email and I'll get it over to you.
Okay. Mark, can you just throw something in the chat there and let me know that you got it? Awesome. All right, Foxy, he's got it. You two are connected. Want to thank all the attendees. Listen, if you're into women's lacrosse or some defensive concepts, Scott Teeter's coming up at 8:00. He's the head coach for the Louisville Cardinals. It should be a good one. Thanks for attending, Foxy. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, you take care. Have a good night.
Bye-bye. Stay safe, everybody.